What is up, my fellow gamers out there? Let's start the video with a crazy fact. Guess how long ago the first Resident Evil has been released? It was released in 1996, so as a time of making this video, 30 years ago. That is absolutely crazy. I don't know how about you, but it makes me really old. 30 years ago, it is insane. But the first Resident Evil is a very important part of gaming history. Because without this game, we probably wouldn't have a genre called survival horror. Because of course, even in the 80s and in the 90s, we had loads of horror games in a lot of platforms on PCs and on consoles, but none of them could bring the same experience that Resident Evil could. This constant tension, the item management, the exploration, and it's just the whole atmosphere with the full motion videos. And it just was something which was like unheard of, and it's not a surprise that this was an absolutely massive success. Myself, I played this game quite late, back in 2001, because I got my PlayStation 1 back in that time, so I was a quite late adopter, but I still have fond memories of this game. And of course, if you think about what kind of franchise the first Resident Evil game started, 3 games. I think it was three main games on the PlayStation 1, quite few games on the PS2. It went on the PS3, numerous movies, so it was absolute success. So lately I was decided to replay the first Resident Evil again on the PS1 to see how it holds up, if it's worth playing today, how it aged. Maybe it's just the memories and just the nostalgia which just cloud my judgment, and the game is maybe aged badly. But no, this is still a very solid game. And in this video I'm going to tell you about my experience about replaying the first Resident Evil, and I'm going to tell you if you should play it again today or not. I'm going to talk a bit about the history of the game and about some cool aspects. So without any further delay, let's start the video and let's visit this old creepy manor. Are you ready? Let's get started. I first played Resident Evil back in 2001, and like a lot of people at that time, it left a pretty strong impression on me. But going back to those older games can be risky, because what it felt tense and immersive back then can sometimes feel clunky and outdated today. So I decided to revisit it anyway, not just for nostalgia, but to see if it actually holds up. And, just as I expected, it really does. Resident Evil isn't just another PlayStation game, it's one of those titles that helped define an entire genre. The original Resident Evil launched in 1996 on the PlayStation and immediately stood out from everything else on the market. Developed by Capcom, the game was part of their push to create something more cinematic and atmospheric, and at the time it genuinely felt like a new kind of experience. Not just an action game, but something slower, more deliberate and much more tense. When it released, the reception was very strong. Critics praised the atmosphere, the use of pre-rendered backgrounds, the camera angles, and especially the tension created by limited resources. At the same time, even back then, the voice acting and dialogue were criticized, which is funny because today that bad voice acting has become part of the game's identity. In terms of scores, the original game typically landed in the high 80s to low 90s range, depending on the publication, which for the time was considered excellent. It wasn't just liked, it was recognized as something important. The original Resident Evil went on to sell over 5 million copies on the original PlayStation, which is huge for a game of that era, especially for something that wasn't a traditional action title. The director's cut version, released in 1997, added even more to that success, offering additional modes, rearranged item placement, and a slightly refined experience for returning players. This game laid the foundation for what now we call survival horror, a genre built around limited resources, tension, exploration, and that constant feeling that you are never really safe. And especially this feeling of constantly being unsafe, it really works well and creates a constant tension. Before Resident Evil, horror games of course existed, but they didn't quite feel like this. This game introduced a very specific kind of tension, not through constant action, but through limiting you in a way. It did not constantly throwing enemies at you, you have a limited inventory system, and you really have to be careful how you use your resources, as they are very limited. The game is constantly putting you in situations where you can't afford to deal with everything, and this design philosophy went on to influence countless games that came after it. But before we jump into the main game, we have to talk about that intro. Back in 1996, this live action opening was genuinely impressive. I remember I was showing it to my friends and parents. It felt cinematic, different, almost like you were about to watch a horror movie instead of playing a game. But today, we have to be really honest, guys. It has a full-on B-movie energy. The acting is awkward, the delivery is unintentionally funny, and the whole thing feels like it belongs in a low-budget horror film you watch at 2 a.m. But the charm is part of the experience now. It's cheesy, it's weird, it makes me smile, and it's kind of perfect.
Well, I'm sorry.
The story itself is simple but interesting. You are part of a special forces unit called the Stars, which sent to investigate a series of strange incidents on the outskirts of Raccoon City. Things quickly go wrong as seen in the intro, and you end up trapped inside a mysterious mansion that feels like a haunted house. You immediately hear a gunshot, you go investigate it, and the famous first meeting with that zombie occurs. By the time you go back to the main hall, your teammates are gone, only Jill's handgun is left on the floor, so you are on your own, ready to explore the house. And as you start your exploring, you uncover bits and pieces of what happened there, through notes, files, and environmental clues. And what's interesting is that the game never overwhelms you with long cutscenes or heavy exposition. Instead, it lets you piece things together yourself, which actually makes the world feel more believable and immersive. And when I say piece the things together yourself, I really mean, as solving the various difficulties of the house feels like opening a puzzle box, and it is a satisfying experience. One of the first things people usually mention when talking about classic Resident Evil is the controls. Yes, the infamous tank controls. If you're not used to games from this era, this is going to feel awkward at first, because movement is very deliberate, turning takes time, and quick reactions are not as easy as in modern games. However, once it clicks, it actually becomes part of the experience rather than a problem. As myself playing a lot of retro games, tank controls were fine for me, but if you are used to modern games, it definitely takes time to get used to it. But even with this, the controls are absolutely fine, don't worry about it. Combat is an important part of the game, and luckily it is also more reliable than you might expect, especially compared to other games from that time. If you ever played Alone in the Dark 2, you probably remember how frustrating it could be to line up a shot and still miss completely. I made a whole video about my struggles with it. I placed a link to that video on the top of the screen now, check it out. The combat and the aiming feels consistent, and when you shoot, almost all the time you can hit your target. The whole mechanic aged well, and it does not causing you frustration. I can go back to Alone in the Dark 2 again with an example when the ammo is scarce and the aiming is horrible, and your frustration will turn to rage quit very quickly. But with Resident Evil, you don't have to worry about any of these issues. But the real tension in Resident Evil doesn't come from the zombies themselves. Zombies can be scary if they catch you and bite you, and let me give you a quick tip here: do not kill the zombies, only if it is absolutely necessary. Most of the time you can dodge them and save ammo. So, the real tension in the game comes from what you don't have. You are constantly low on ammo, you are constantly watching your health, and every decision matters. Do you fight or do you run? Can I use my last herb, but if I'm not going to find any more for a long time? In my opinion, here is where the tension and the game design really shines. If you would be loaded with ammo and health items constantly, the game wouldn't have any tension at all. You would just stroll through the mansion like the Terminator at the police station in the first movie. Do you remember that? So, once you start learning how to dodge enemies and pick your battles, the whole experience changes, and suddenly the game opens up in a much more manageable way. People say that the beginning is the most difficult, and once you start to collect more and more items it will be easier. I agree with this, but the constant tension will always be there. The mansion design is another reason why the game still works so well. It doesn't hold your hand, but it gently guides you. You can only go those ways where leads to an item which helps you progress. And of course, the more items you will find, the more thinking you have to do, and the typical "where the hell am I supposed to use this thing" thought will constantly pop up in your head. You might even enter a corridor while low on health and ammo, see multiple zombies ahead, and then notice a staircase leading somewhere else, and down there you'll often find exactly what you need, like a save room or healing item. The map helps as well, but it's not overly detailed. It shows you where you have been, but it doesn't tell you everything, like which key opens which door, which room is which, so you still need to pay attention and remember things. To be honest with you guys, by the time I was explored most of the house, I not even used the map as I remembered where I'm supposed to go next. It is handy, it is there, but I not really used it. As all Resident Evil games, the very first one is full with puzzles. I don't mind puzzles in games, but if they are very cruel and difficult, I hate them as it really halts the progress and just raises my frustration. Here, most of the puzzles are fairly straightforward, if you played adventure games before, but there are definitely a few moments where the game expects you to slow down and actually read the files you find. And if you don't, you might end up wandering around what you missed and where. One of the most difficult puzzles in the game is when you have to create a specific chemical to kill a giant mutant plant. I'm not a chemist, but solving the puzzle definitely felt like a chemistry lab task. And then there's the atmosphere. It all screams 90s PS1 vibes all over the place. The music, the sound design, the fixed camera angles, it all comes together to create a sense of tension that still works today. The music itself is matching the atmosphere perfectly, and the parts where are no music, just the caving of the crows in the art gallery for example, it is perfect. You don't know if they will attack you or they just will sit there. It's a perfect execution of a simple but very effective atmosphere to make you tense. If I have to describe the music and the atmosphere of the game, it constantly makes you feel like something could go wrong at any moment, and I think this is the whole point of the game. There are also small details that makes the experience smoother, like the game telling you when an item is no longer useful, so you don't have to carry unnecessary things around. It's a small feature, but it makes a big difference in a game where inventory space is limited. Going back to Resident Evil, I was expecting a solid experience, but what I found was something more than that. A game that still understands how to build tension, a game that still respects the player, and if the game is well made and the developers put a lot of thought and effort into it, will be a solid game even after 30 years later. It might feel slow at first, but once it clicks, you realize this isn't just an old game, it's the blueprint for the whole genre, and that is why it deserves respect from the gaming community. So, should you play the first Resident Evil again, or for the first time if you haven't played it yet? Definitely, yes, this is the prime example, a very well made game, because it still holds up really well. Of course, if you've not played any kind of game with the tank controls, the controls are going to feel a bit different than what you are used to it, but if you played any kind of tank game with tank controls, you're going to be absolutely fine. What I really enjoyed in the game is that the aiming is just perfect. If you raise your weapon and you shoot, you're going to hit the target like most of the time. It's not going to be that kind of nightmare like in Alone in the Dark, the second Alone in the Dark game that was absolutely horrible. And even like in newer games, which people would call Resident Evil clones, there were some issues with the aiming, but here it is not. And the atmosphere is still good. I wouldn't call the game scary. It's not scary. There are some eerie moments in it, but for me the most frightening part was with the fucking spiders. I hate spiders, and there was that moment when I had to go into this kind of room with the pool table and the bar, and these massive tarantulas was crawling on the ceiling, and I was like, oh fucking hell, I was like, whoa, that was bad. And when they jumped on the floor and approached me, oh yeah, so that was scary. That was a that was a cool experience for me. And yes, it's definitely holds up very well, and it's still, as I mentioned in the intro, it's still very important part of gaming history. So if you never experienced it, I encourage you to give it a try, and even if you played it a long time ago, give it another go, because it's definitely worth playing. And just before you're going to start to play, here's a tip. this game is difficult. If you start on a normal difficulty setting, and you're going to start to play as I did, and I just started to shoot the zombies and just went on my way, I ran out of ammo very fast. And my frustration level started to raise, and I said like, no, okay, I had to finish this game because it's a good game. So what I did, I restarted on easy. Yes, on easy, because I don't want to struggle, and with easy, it was fine. It was okay, it was definitely easier, but it still had a nice challenge for me. So if you struggle with it, don't worry, let's restart it with on easy mode, then you're going to have a nice and breezy experience. And you can choose between Chris and Jill. Many people say that playing with Jill is easier because she has more slots in the inventory and she has lockpick as well, but I played with Chris and my experience was absolutely fine, so it's up to you. And now, please let me know in the comments if you played Resident Evil, what kind of memories you have with it, even back if you played it back when it has been launched or later, or any memorable moments in the game. And if I can recommend you a video, I made a very good review video about Underdark 4, which is a very similar game with a cool manor with a very fantastic atmosphere. I'm going to put the link up here, check that one out as well. And I hope that you enjoyed this video today, and I'm going to see you in the next Backlog Quest video. Thank you for watching, goodbye.